Reports to be received. We have a report from the Director of Education on our 2022-23 operational plan of the board.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, you have an extensive report in your package. The 2022-23 operational report is found on pages 45 to 65 of the package. The report reflects the board's strategic directions of creating confident learners, engaging communities, and demonstrating ethical stewardship. As you'll note, the framework this year has changed slightly. I know you've seen these reports before, but the framework has changed slightly, and the goals are aligned with the ministry's draft of the BEEP, which we call the Board Equity and Improvement Plan. So in particular, the report focuses on a number of areas: learning, recovery, and renewal, achievement, human rights and equity, mental health, well-being and engagement, pathways and transitions. In addition, you'll see a focus on environmental stewardship and a commitment to the arts are also highlighted within the plan. There's a lot in here, and you will note that there are many initiatives linked to equity, and in particular, a link to the Dismantling Anti-Black Racism Strategy, work that we've committed to over the next few years. And also you'll note the completion of a student census that really will inform a lot of our work. I'd like to thank Madame Leboeuf, who has, I'm calling her that now, because Trustee who does. So a special thank you to for putting a lot of this work together and guiding us through the development of the plan. The goals outlined here are many, and I think reflect the commitments of the senior team, and we would be happy to answer any questions that you may have about the goals this year.
Thank you very much, and I would be remiss if every time I did not mention that these plans are leaders in the province for how they are organized and displayed for everyone. So congratulations to the senior team for putting out such great representations of our great work. And any questions from trustees? Trustee Burgess.
We have references in here about priority schools. What are priority schools?
Priority schools would be I'm just looking to who's put priority schools in their goals, because it can mean different things. Priorities in terms of could be achievement, but can you refer to a page that you might, because that word might be used more than once? 51. Superintendent Bryant.
Through you, Madam Chair, so that's really referring to schools where we would be looking for equity focus. So similar to the last discussion, that would be the priority schools.
Any other questions from trustees? Student Trustee Hawkins.
Thank you. Also on page 51, we've mentioned the implementation of the African Studies course with the pilot implementation in 2024. Which schools or kind of what grade level would that course be looking at?
Superintendent Howard, you could probably answer that.
Yeah. The schools have not been selected at this point. We're just organizing to plan a framework for that. But typically it would be a grade 10 course.
Trustee Sivkar.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. On page 47, there's the goal around improving early reading and math. And I know that this was a big point of conversation and discussion, especially during the pandemic, and we're still transitioning out of it in terms of our being in person in schools. And so my question is on page 47, it says expected outcomes around 70% of students will demonstrate a 10% increase on phonemic or phonemic? Okay, phonemic, phonics assessment, 5% increase of students reading performance level 3 and level 4, et cetera, et cetera. There's a few others here as well. My question around this is how abnormal are these goals? Are they in line with previous year's goals, or has there been a need to increase them or maybe even decrease them in terms of where people's students' reading levels are at and where we want them to be? Like what's the expectation has been in the past and what is it now? And then how have we adjusted our measurable outcomes accordingly? can answer that.
Through you, Madam Chair, the goals are aggressive and the plan is aggressive. It matches the plan that we have implemented, and particularly after a delayed opportunity for learning for students with the impact of the pandemic, we felt that it was appropriate that the plan was aggressive and markedly appropriately the goal was aggressive.
So thank you. So supplemental to that, because I know we had discussed this in the past, and I appreciate that we're taking an aggressive focus. Let's say, for example, a student is a year behind when they're starting, grade 1. So they're reading at, below an SK level. By the end of grade 1, are they supposed to be caught up then 2 grades? In theory, is there something like when you say aggressive, is it that they're going to then meet their targets of where they should be by the end of the year? And I guess I'm just trying to get a sense of what that aggressiveness looks like, in other words.
So each child's different, right? And so the plan needs to be tailored. The Acadians and then the quick phonics screeners. The Acadians give you kind of an overall view of where the child is at, and the quick phonics screeners give you more detailed information as to what the child needs. So dependent upon that and the training that we've provided for teachers, but we have a really robust program of professional learning, and the resources are abundant in the schools and continue to flow based on the needs of, teachers have identified as this is a very high need. And I know my colleague, Superintendent Wilcox, can speak to the power of the Lexia program in helping students to develop very quickly with the intensity of that work.
Thank you. So Lexia is used, and I think you've seen presentations on that. It's a Tier 2 intervention. So obviously for our marker students in the plan, we say that students will excel by at least 1 grade level. Oftentimes it's greater than that. We've seen student improvement by 2 grade levels. So that's a Tier 2 intervention that we utilize with students who are struggling readers. But as Dr. Howitt said, our Science of Reading initiative that we're running this year, we're really excited about it and building the capacity of teachers to teach reading. And we're sure we're going to see some really great outcomes around that.
Trustee Omstead?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I'm looking at page 57, and it says to develop a mandatory early intervention and response requirement for school administrators in response to human rights and hate incidents or concern, which I think is a very needed protocol in schools. But what I'm wondering is there going to be a third party involved, an impartial third party for a staff member or student to go to, because hate incidences and human rights violations aren't solely committed by students. They could also be committed by teachers, by principals, by people in a senior role. So is there going to be a third party who can look at these incidents as an impartial person and also as a safety net for those students or staff who fear reprisal, because that historically has happened in various circumstances? So I'm just wondering what steps are being put in place to ensure impartiality and to ensure that there is that kind of, seniority check so that issues can be dealt with without fear.
If I could ask our equity and inclusion equity advisor, Roz Salvador, to respond to that question. I think Roz is on the line. Roz, are you there?
I am.
No, thank you.
I am. Can you all hear me?
Indeed we can. Go ahead.
Wonderful. Thank you for the question, through you, Madam Chair. So the description that you were just reading is primarily an early intervention model. So directing principals and staff on how to respond to incidents that arise impacting students in schools. And I think what's being raised now is also the issue of looking at a complaint model. So in the instance where someone wasn't satisfied with the school-based process, then what would be the next step or the next level for them to be able to make a complaint to? And we are developing that process. So we understand that, yes, typically there wouldn't be sort of an external third party unless there was a third party investigator that was retained, which does happen sometimes. But we are looking to develop a process because it is important for students and parents to know what their next steps are in terms of, if they're not satisfied with the school-based process.
Is there a supplemental, Trustee Omstead?
No, I'm glad to hear that. I just wondered because it says, a protocol for staff to report and for senior leaders to respond to and to fully address human rights concerns. And I just know that those human rights concerns can occur within the staff itself. And I just wondered if there was that, that third person for a staff member to maybe reach out to rather than the principal or that staff member, because it could harm relationships within a school. It could influence dynamics within a school. So I just wondered if there's going to be that ability for staff to reach out to someone to report something going on. There always is that fear, especially for a new teacher or a student in a school.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Rob.
Oh, thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Yes, so the model will actually tell people where to go depending on who the concern is with regarding. So if the concern was with respect to another staff member, they would go to the principal. If the concern was with the principal, then they could go to the superintendent. And I would be in there in some way. We're still having discussions as to how that would occur.
Thank you for that. Trustee Chin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I see the operational plans. There are several places mentioned the EQAO test. As far as I know, we haven't got the test so far for the last year. And I'm wondering how we get this updated, expected outcomes without knowing the previous year's outcome. And is there a opportunity for us to get updated about the previous result? Thank you.
Superintendent Howard?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair, the EQAO results continue to be embargoed, so we wait bated breath to see what those results are. We will provide a report to the Board of Trustees once they are revealed publicly. The goals have been written in a manner to say the improvement based on the benchmark. And so even though we don't know what the benchmark is, right? So a report will be coming once they are revealed. And we anticipate that very soon. They said the end of October.
Okay, thank you.
Superintendent Candy, do you have anything to add there?
No, that was it. Just that once we know what the baseline is, we're going to build on that for next year.
Appreciate it. Thanks. Any other questions from trustees on our operational plan? Trustee Burgess.
Thanks, Madam Chair. My questions are found, I suppose, regarding page 1661, improve parent and community engagement. And I look under the action steps and the expected measurable outcomes, and I see consistently, effectively engage through a variety of electronic means, websites, social media, EDSB, virtual, implement the communications calendar on all platforms, utilize features on social media, implement text message, utilize new website. I see a lot of things, and I'm wondering for those parents who don't like to engage electronically, who find either it a barrier or something they're trying to escape because they spend most of their day on that, whatever the reason. Where's the in-person? Where's the outreach? Where are the events? Where are the things like outreach for, kindergarten and childcare and translation ability and that kind of thing, as far as our action steps or our expected measurable outcomes. This will reach those who are already engaged. And it certainly speaks to something where in the last few years, everybody's been virtually engaged, but there's a whole lot of people who don't want to do that and don't like that. And I'd like to see something about the in-person.
Superintendent Hillman?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm happy to respond, and thank you for the question. One of the challenges we face when developing the operational plan is what do we put in it? So I agree and fully support that, and the work we do with principals will continue to emphasize, in some ways now more than ever, post-COVID or whatever term we're using as we're exiting COVID, re-engaging families in schools. So that work does continue. That is the conversations we have and the supports we discuss with them. The operational plan we've used to identify new or different work, so that these are enhancements and continued growth within our electronic communications processes and the new web page. So that's why they're highlighted with specific measurables. But certainly our ongoing conversations with our administrators are about engaging that. I was with 2 schools today talking about specifically what kind of translation services can we have in the building for the upcoming November 18th parent-teacher interviews. So those are acknowledged and agreed upon, and these represent new and distinct work we've not embraced before.
Supplemental. I just think it needs to be reflected. I see here something that fits certainly with the last few years with a lot of virtual stuff. There's been a real deficit of face-to-face interaction amongst parents, amongst different folks within communities, etc. I really think that we need to kind of actually commit to some more in-person, more events, more things that we can measure to see that we're doing exactly that in a new way, because I still don't think the E-way is going to necessarily deliver what we want. The socialization over the last 3 years has been really a big struggle. When you're engaging communities, it can't just, even the new ways of improving the E-ways, I think we need to put it in our document somewhere for the next board.
If I could, one thing that might be reflective of that is the work that we're doing on the dismantling anti-Black racism strategy, working with community with respect to a series of committees wherein community is partaking in discussions around the work we should do. I think we have that with our Indigenous Education Advisory Committee as well, but I think there certainly are other opportunities. Your point is well taken. Thank you, Trustee Burgess.
And Trustee Omstead, and then we'll wrap this one up.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. It's just a quick question. On page 65, the very last point about enhancing secondary arts programming with a social justice lens. I'm very excited to see this on the plan. And I was just wondering, how are we developing these plans and these units? Who are we collaborating with? And is this just an initiative that is within our board, or is this something across Ontario?
Thank you for the question, and through you, Madam Chair. This item came as a derivative of a question that was asked in public session by the Board of Trustees in terms of concern in our visual arts programs and a decline in enrollment in some of them. I had my first meeting, in fact, yesterday. Included in that meeting are individuals from central office that focus in the area of ethical stewardship in terms of environmental stewardship, Indigenous education, Black Lives Matter, and social justice and mental health and well-being. We will be, they are starting with a development of a framework to provide a professional development plan to visual arts teachers, building upon the work that they are doing and making connections with community partners, such as Indigenous artists and so on, to provide an infusion of socially minded art into our secondary programs. And I'm super excited about it because I think our students, and we have 2 amazing students right in this room with us, are guided by a rising to act in a socially minded and conscious way. And I think these types of learning opportunities will attract more students to the visual art program.
That's great. Trustee Olmsted, do you have supplemental?
No, I don't. I just think it's a wonderful, wonderful initiative, and I wanted to find out a little bit more. So thanks so much for that introduction, Alex.
Agreed. We'll wrap it up with Trustee Halberstadt. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, on page 60, it looks like this is a new buzzword I've never seen before, but decrease bounce rate by 5%. The bounce rate.
Superintendent Hellman.
I'm happy to share my new learning with all of you. So in working with Madeline McEachran in terms of the new web page, she is highly skilled to start with, but engaged in the analysis of data. One of the points of data that web users look at is the bounce rate. And what bounce rate is where somebody's drawn to your site. So they've hit something or hit, and they've ended up there, and then you've immediately left. So you might look at something online or a news article, you hit it, you look at it for a second and go, that's not for me. What you have done is bounced out of the site. So it's really a measure of engagement, people being drawn to your site, and while they're there, looking at additional items, getting into your site, following other articles. So by decreasing your bounce rate, what you're really doing is having the people who have come to your site stay in the site and do that. So it's just one of the variables that they're able to measure, and the software that they use allows them to, allows us to track that. So who's engaged, how long have they engaged, those types of things. So I'm glad I could share that. Thanks.
I just have one supplementary. EDSB on the same page, talking about the goals to be determined based on results from 2021, 2022. I know there's been some criticism of EDSB, and I wonder if this has anything to do with that. Goals to be determined are not based until next year, I guess, in the middle of this year.
I'm happy to start and not completely take over the IT portfolio this evening. One of the challenges we've had with EDSB, which really can provide comprehensive data for us, but it's a significant draw of information, right? Every student has access to that account, every teacher. So we have a request in, as we've had since the summer, to get that data from EDSB. Last year they were able to provide it to us in September and therefore include it specifically. We're still waiting on it. We hope not much longer, but as soon as we know what this year's data tells us, then we can update this plan, and then that will help us to make sure. We don't want to say we're going to increase in certain areas by 7 or 8% if we found out last year, we increased by 40%, that we should be looking at bigger. So we're still waiting on that one piece from EDSB. As soon as we have it, we'll refine that and make that clear.
You're not going to quit EDSB then?
I am not.
See what it takes to be a lifelong learner? You're still teaching us about bounce rates at 9:30 at night on a Tuesday. Thanks very much for that. That was well done, by the way. Okay, so we're moving on to